Hello, and welcome to the Institute of Applied Reality. I am your instructor, Earnest Twidt, and this is Finite Omnology 101. Our first lesson asked the question...
Excuse me.
Oh, yes.
What is finite omnology?
Good question. Finite Omnology studies the truth of everything by limiting our scope to that which is proven to exist.
What is the use of that?
By limiting ourselves to that which is factual, demonstrable, tangible, or evident, we discover that much of what we think we know isn't grounded in reality.
And what is the use of that?
It's a way of thinking beyond what you think you know, because what you think you know often doesn't serve you and traps you into a hell you accept as all there is.
Really?
Yes.
How does limited omnology work?
Finite Omnology. It's like mentally walking around with a blindfold on, allowing your other senses to perceive a greater world. Used effectively, it's like an enema for your life, slowly breaking up the impacted malignant thoughts that drain your energy and consume your time.
Are you selling me something?
Definitely not. It'd be like selling mathematics or chemistry. Maybe one day there'll be a book. But for now, it is an online video masquerading as a web course for your entertainment and or annoyance, whatever the mood you're in. Are you ready?
I guess.
Our introductory topic asks the question, is God an asshole?
Excuse me, is that right?
I'm sorry. For you believers in God, trust me, I have no interest whatsoever to offend you or your deeply held beliefs. I am not here to convert, subvert, or prevert your faith, and I humbly ask that you come along with me on this potentially revelatory journey.
But you said we were only going to talk about things that exist.
Yes. For you atheists and sticklers, don't worry, I do not have proof that there is in fact a God. There is, however, a vast historical record of people believing in an all-powerful creator. And I would go so far as to say that the way we all think is directly influenced by God. Generations upon generations have taken words, stories, ideas of supposedly divine origin and shaped the world around them. These concepts have become ubiquitous in our thinking, and it takes a lot of effort to tease out all the influences of God. It's when you start examining this vast historical record that you start wondering if the God presented is an asshole. I think this would be a more widely held view if a deity weren't involved, but fear gets in the way. But nothing should stop us in our quest for knowledge and understanding that is finite omnology. Hence, we shall endeavor to objectively review the evidence to determine if God is a total jerk. For context, of the over 8 billion people on our planet, there are over 4 billion humans that follow Abrahamic religions, including Jews, Christians, and Muslims. The Old Testament of the Bible is the unifying element, and Genesis is the first book. The very first story in the book of Genesis says over the course of 5 days, God creates everything. Light, the sun, the earth, the oceans, plants, animals, and then on the 6th day, a man. He places the man in a garden, sees that he needs a partner, and creates a woman. Now, the garden contains many things, including the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. God tells the humans not to eat the fruit from either tree, that it will kill them. Another creature in the garden, a serpent, convinces the woman to have a bite, which she does, and then turns to the man and offers him a bite, which he does, at which moment they realize they are naked and decide to hide. God, who is walking around the garden, wonders where they've got to and finds them hiding in the bushes because they are naked and ashamed. God immediately knows what has happened, gives them clothes, curses the serpent with leglessness, the man with endless toil and struggle, and the woman with painful childbirth and a subservience to the man. He then tosses them out of the garden so they cannot eat the fruit of the tree of life, which would make them like God himself. So, tell me, how is this not the actions of an asshole? Yes, undoubtedly, the man and woman disobeyed. But does the punishment fit the crime? What kind of jerk creates an inquisitive being and places within their grasp something forbidden without knowing at some point they would do exactly what he told them not to do? If obedience was such an important quality, why didn't he just scrap the two of them right then and there, instead of forcing billions of their offspring to suffer for this foreseeable mistake? There is a greater lesson in this story. The man and woman didn't just disobey. No. They defied the will of God. This is the basis of sin. We had to learn that when God mandates something, you better obey, or else expect massive reprisals. The list of sins is found in this book, sprinkled here and there, though it's not very clear. There are a few notable commandments, but in general it's all rather ill-defined. What seems to be the most important thing is that defying the will of God brings with it consequences far beyond severe, affecting not only those that are doing the defying, but their progeny. This is the reason why you should always punish a sinner, because you never know if you're going to be caught in God's fallout because of someone else's transgression. Homosexuality is an excellent example of this on numerous levels. The Bible declares homosexuality wholly unacceptable, unnatural, and punishable to the fullest extent. A later story in Genesis tells of God wiping out the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah because supposedly homosexuality was rampant there. What was so objectionable to God that he would forbid it? Did God not want love and passion and caring between two people who had the same junk? Was it that the human body wasn't being used as the manufacturer intended and therefore voided the warranty? To me, that would be the fault of the manufacturer, but in this case, the product is forced to pay the price. In the case of eating the fruit, man was trying to be as God, so, are homosexuals trying to be like God? But none of this matters. God doesn't need to explain his reasonings. It is our job to follow his will. And his will is found in this book, in places here and there. And we should follow it. But you know, it is widely accepted these days that who we are attracted to is part of our makeup from birth. I've known a number of homosexual men who would have preferred to have been attracted to women to save them all the many negative consequences of being gay. They struggled hard to deny their desires, as they didn't want to defy the will of God. But the question is, how did that desire get in there? Either God allowed it, was too weak to stop it, or God made them that way. So God created an individual desiring a forbidden other only to suffer? What kind of asshole would do that? Nobody would want to be born into that kind of nightmare. None of us even asked to be born. And to top it all off, if God judges us to be unworthy after we're dead, it is written in the Bible that we will suffer for eternity in hell for the sins we committed on earth in our short life. So, we're all pretty much screwed here, because our Creator is an absolute tyrant who knows full well that we will defy him, either knowingly or unknowingly, because his Bible is rather obtuse, but he's confident enough to condemn us to an eternity of pain and suffering because of our transgressions. It's all rather bleak. I guess I should just hunker down and try my best to be obedient. Oh, make sure others are obedient as well, but you know, I could still suffer consequences no matter how good I am or how much I try. But you know, this all doesn't really add up in my reckoning. Our Creator acts more like a petulant child than a wielder of vast power and knowledge. Doesn't really pass the smell test. And you know, when that happens, it's a good time to turn to Finite Omnology. Finite Omnology starts with looking at the totality of the issue and strives to find the core elements that are undeniable. What is its nature? Who does it serve? Looking at the Garden of Eden, it is essentially a story of God and humans. Stories are used to illuminate or illustrate an event or idea that happened in the past or in someone's imagination. Since this story concerns God and humans, well, Finite Omnology advises us to just stick with the humans because God, well, is complicated. Now that we know we are dealing with humans, certain facts are now available to us. At the Institute of Applied Reality, we've compiled an extensive list of facts about everything, including humans, and for now, I will share 3. Humans are excellent at ignoring inconsistencies and incongruities, especially when those issues aren't that vital to one's current situation. We're pretty good at ignoring vital things as well. This aspect of humanity contributes to rear refrigerator syndrome, where stale or rotten thoughts live long after their expiration date and could cause serious harm if ingested. Another reality of being a human being is that when we get to a place where we cannot explain something we want to believe, we fabricate something wholly unprovable to confirm our desire. The more unprovable, the better. And lastly, it is a fact that when humans are tasked with conveying a story, they will tell it the way they remember it. sharing their interpretation and understanding, whether or not it was accurate to the event or original idea. The Adam and Eve story is a tremendously old story that was passed down verbally for eons before it was ever put into written word. Like the game telephone. Who knows what the original intent was, though elements do exist to today. Though it is easily dismissed as some quaint allegory or an archaic bit of poetry, with a bit of finite omnological analysis, we may uncover deeper truths. In all honesty, the writers of the Bible created a most confounding narrative which thinkers of the past twisted themselves in knots trying to make sense of. God did warn Adam and Eve not to eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but a talking serpent convinced them otherwise. After Adam and Eve chose to eat the fruit, they didn't bust out the theory of relativity or rush to the tree of life and try to become as God as past interpreters have proclaimed. No, they sewed together fig leaves to cover their naughty bits. Now, we are told Eden is full of many things, so it's just as likely that the garden possessed knowledge of everything. A tree of the knowledge of healing, a bush of string theory, a vine of time travel, and others, including knowledge that wasn't particularly helpful because God provided us infinite options from which to choose. God did warn Adam not to partake from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. In his infinite wisdom, God understood the pointlessness of that knowledge, but had to offer it anyway. Maybe we needed to eat some other knowledge before to temper that vile fruit. Leaving them alone to choose for themselves, Adam and Eve ate the fruit, and immediately things changed. Suddenly, innocently, being naked was shameful, and they hid, though God and the other inhabitants obviously had no issue with nudity. Evil now lurked around every corner, and fear gripped us. It wasn't the tree of useful knowledge because we were now held in the spell of good and evil. Actions, thoughts, ideas became right and wrong without recognition of their true nature. We began judging ourselves and others based on personal interpretation. We became obsessed with things of little importance like our bare junk, and instead of enjoying what was there around us, we focused on subjective categorization, unable to see the beauty in all things. We got to labeling our actions as right and wrong. We fixated on banality and self-incrimination and punishment. We kicked ourselves out of Eden with our fears and misunderstandings. Maybe this isn't a story about disobedience and sin, and it's about where we went wrong in our thinking and how we should look at things differently in the future. If we weren't so consumed with good and evil, we might actually seek out the real reasons for why things are the way they are. The single most confounding question is, why does God allow the innocent to suffer and die? The writers of the Bible found their answer in sin. We did God wrong, and now we're paying the consequences. This is not to say that there aren't actions that are wholly vile and could be classified as evil, but this is just a partial list of what the Bible and other religious texts classify as sin. Sin was very useful in manipulating a whole menagerie of thoughts and actions and manhandled them into the continuum of good and evil. It is our fault that we suffer because we can't stop engaging in acts of sin. You know, sin may be the single most toxic thought in the back of our collective refrigerators. Sin was able to take an innocent, even beautiful act of two men loving each other and made it an act of defying the will of God, despite there being no damage to anyone or anything in a consensual homosexual relationship. Well, no more damage than in a consensual heterosexual relationship. Now, the continuation of our species is huge in our being. And in homosexual relationships, there is no offspring. Maybe it was that fact which caused the middlemen of God's word to create off-limits. Saying it was defying the will of God would be very useful in a whole series of issues when you're trying to get a large group of people moving in the same direction. Add to that the fear of eternal damnation, and very few people would speak out against it, especially when it's in our nature to ignore inconsistencies.
Yeah, sure, God loves us even when he's throwing us in a lake of fire.
It is a fact that most of us possess a deep uncertainty about our purpose, our desires, our needs, and the impact of our lives on the greater world. Most of us seek to find a balance between our personal desires and our responsibility to others. It doesn't take much to manipulate this normal, healthy questioning of ourselves and our actions in the world and turn it into self-incrimination with the addition of sin. From this position of brokenness, we become beholden to those who offer us direction, recrimination, and a modicum of comfort. God loves you if you obey his rules, and I will tell you what they are. Having God's will expressed in a book seems a most peculiar way for him to communicate with us. For centuries, very few people had access to a Bible, much less in a language they could read, if they could read at all, because most people were illiterate. Still, it seems most bizarre to me that the creator of the universe would resort to a book to have his will be known. If it was important to him, if he really wanted to communicate with us, if it was beyond our ability to divine his will without it. I think one of two possibilities is true. Either God, as presented in the Bible, is a complete and total asshole, or the humans who wrote the Bible made God an asshole. There is plenty of evidence that humans abuse power, and those fronting for God have been quite powerful. There is also plenty of evidence that humans manipulate other humans to make them behave the way they want them to behave. And it is very much in human nature to blame others for atrocities. And a silent partner like God would be a most excellent patsy. Now, there's only one thing that we know of God's nature, if God exists, and that is he creates. Everything else is mere speculation. To be clear, I do believe in God for personal reasons, and he is not an asshole. I find ample, tangible evidence of his existence for my beliefs. The best way to describe my God would be as a father, which is how he's often described in the Bible. Not a harsh or cruel father, but the kind of father I aspire to be. One who provides his children the resources to succeed, but allows them the room to figure out how to make it work. Maybe a bit standoffish and aloof, but how else are we to own what we manifest? If we're merely creating that which he imagined, why didn't he just create it himself instead of forcing us to do all the nastiness of that is often our lives? Well, plenty of time and energy and thought have been spent trying to figure that one out, but if all those thinkers and theologians and clergy used a tiny bit of finite omnology, who knows? We might have better answers at this point. Well, I'll leave it at that. Are there any questions?
Is this going to be on the test?
Only if you want it to be. Be well, everyone, and feel free to leave comments and suggestions. Thank you. Until next time.